Hey, this is Joshua. Welcome to the Start series. I think this is episode 9. This is a series of videos about creativity, managing creative blocks, starting projects, freezing your ass off in public routinely. And let's see. Today's video. So, the subject of today's video is the idea of standards and how do you have standards when I just spent the last week advocating for ignoring the rules, publishing things even though they might not necessarily be good per se. What would be another one? Sorry, I'm walking and talking. I know it's not the best way to do this, but it's cold out and I'm on my way to work. And what would be the last one? It's just sort of like, ignoring the rules, having your own standards, trusting that you'll get good by giving a shit, and not worrying about so-called quality or the kind of status quo. This is mildly scenic. Maybe we'll just stop right here. So what I'll throw out there then is how to develop those standards. And to do that, I'm going to talk briefly about my favorite movie in the world, Gerhard Richter Painting. So there's a great scene in Gerhard Richter Painting where he's in his office and there's a small grouping of images right above his desk. There's they're all just laser prints. They're not like a proper art or anything. There's a scan of a Picasso drawing from an invite. There's a Courbet painting of a tree, a photo from the Vietnam War, and I think it's a photo of a Greek bust that's kind of damaged. And Richter talks about these works, and he basically says that all of them have the sort of incomprehensible quality that makes something art, like true, real art. And he calls it like this idea of having a storehouse of treasures, that you keep these things around and you analyze them, trying to understand what makes them so powerful, and that by doing so, you're going to improve your own standards. And what's interesting is hanging right above these are a number of his own smaller works. And initially you just think like it's his office. He has a few small works hanging up because maybe they stand out to him from his, I don't know what it is now, 60 years of art making. But what you realize is that that these are actually brand new pieces that are forced to live amongst this work that he thinks is amazing, and that's how he determines if the work is good. If it can occupy that space next to these things that he has decided are some of the greatest works of art he's ever seen, then they're probably ready for prime time. And it's not like an egomania thing. I doubt that he sits there and goes, this is definitely better than the Picasso, let's sell it. But that he does go, this feels like it's still good, even though it's sitting next to this other great stuff. For me, this idea is a game changer. It works heavily in how I teach. I think it's important for creative people to have an internal compass, a notion of what they think is good or bad, regardless of what anybody else thinks. That they might think that something that everyone else agrees is terrible is genius, and that they have their reasons for it, and it's not some ironic postmodern nonsense, that it's grounded in their own sense of aesthetics and their own values and understanding of the world. So if you want to get good, start to cultivate that storehouse of treasures. You already have the things in your life that you think are good. You have the music that makes you want to make music, but try to dig, instead of just going like, this is a great song, I love it, or that's a great painting, I really enjoy it. Try to dig into what is essential about it. Like, so the idea is not to surround yourself with a bunch of things where you're trying to make yourself a clone of it. I'm going to zoom back a little bit. The idea is to analyze these things, to try to get after sort of essential characteristics or elemental truths, which I think is super powerful. That is where your standards come from. That's where your sense of good comes from. So whatever it is you're doing, like the thing that's noticeable with Richter is that he's looking at a bunch of different stuff. He's not just looking at, say, other abstract painting or other quasi-photographic painting. He's looking at a variety of visual matter. And I think that one of the things that's really cool about that is the notion of that there are other things that maybe you would gloss over. Like a musician should have certainly music as part of that storehouse of treasure, but also just sounds that grab them, voices with a particular timbre, and try to understand what is it within that that is grabbing me, because somewhere in that is your own sense of aesthetics and what's truly great or truly powerful. And that's way different than looking at the canon and necessarily agreeing that it's all good, or looking at whatever's popular, or even looking at other artists that you think are great and what influences them. Certainly there's a lot to be learned from that, but this is about looking at what grabs me and what do I think is great. Um, and then trying to figure out how to use that as a thing to hold it up to. Like, it's just occurred to me that I could take a video like this, put it in a YouTube playlist with a bunch of the other sort of public speakers and video bloggers and lecturers that I think are powerful, and see how well it holds up. I will probably be it would probably be a very humbling experience to take this and put it in a playlist with 3 Malcolm X speeches. I would probably learn a lot about where I fall short. And not because I need to give speeches like Malcolm X, but because he was a profoundly powerful orator. So if you want to get good fast, don't just have your inspiration files. Have a very small edit of stuff that you think is truly powerful and try to understand why it's so powerful. Thanks a lot for watching the video. If you have any comments, please leave them below. I would love to hear from you. Best, Joshua.